Visionaries Global Media, your number one source for podcasting entertainment.
All right, this is MGB. We got a very special episode today, and unusually, I'm actually doing the intro as well. It's been a cruel summer. We had a blank space in our bookings. I think we're out of the woods, though, now, Mason. We didn't think we'd get him in our wildest dreams. There's no bad blood between us. He has style. He is fearless. Ryan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here with both of you all. Thanks for carrying me through this podcast. I'm really excited to talk wrestling with you guys and just get some hot takes out of the way. It'll be fun.
Now, the reason I'm doing the introduction is you're actually it's been a while. We haven't had any former students of mine on at all, and you're actually the second one in the last few weeks. You're my first student from America, though. We had one of my students from when I was in England. Now, did you recognize anything in the intro there? I was obviously doing the intro because you're my former student and Mason doesn't know you as well.
Yeah.
That intro was about 3 times longer, Mason, when you first saw it. I was like, I can't do that many. I had to cut it down to the basics.
Nice.
Why did I have all that in there?
Geez, I really don't know. I'm trying to rack my brain. So what might have happened in Ace? What Ace math class did I have? I don't know.
I needed to put more emphasis on some of those things then. I must have had about 8 Taylor Swift songs in that introduction.
Oh, of course, dude. Latest Taylor Swift album is just amazing. I don't know if you all have listened to it. I mean, I don't want to like go down that rabbit hole too much, but I appreciate the work because I've been playing that on repeat, and it's going to be my song for vacation here in a week, so I'm very excited.
I gotta say, I've been very unimpressed with it. Everybody else seems to love it. I've found like a couple of songs I'm sort of okay with.
Okay.
And I'm sort of going to the bottom now, and there's a few more that are like, I recognize that song now. But for me, it's the worst album so far, as far as I can.
Interesting. Mason, what are your thoughts on Taylor Swift? A big fan? What's the deal?
I mean, I like some of the songs. I like all the songs that were in the intro there, but I haven't listened to the album yet.
Okay, all right. We'll have to revisit it.
I think one of my favorite comments from Mason when he was about 5 years old or 6 years old was, this is Taylor Swift, isn't it? I was like, how can you tell? I was like, because she's bashing some former boyfriend or something. I was like, there you go. That's pretty much, that was it. That was the style probably around that time. Now, the reason, we're actually going to go back a little bit before we actually start reviewing the Royal Rumble 2015. This episode's actually probably about 14 months in the making. And I don't even know how much Mason knows about this story. So this was my journalism I did today. I had to go back and search all this stuff out. So on June 28th, 2019, this is a Facebook from Ryan. Watching USA versus France and have a nice wager going with Jay. If USA wins, she writes an essay about why the USA is great. If France wins, I write an essay about why France is great. Either way, it's a blast, USA. And sure enough, USA did win, so I'm
we did.
Person had to write an essay. And I responded, well, look who USA gets in the semifinals. This is the Women's World Cup, I should say, of soccer.
Yes, let's preface that.
So England had already made it there. So you responded, are we feeling a little wager of sorts coming up? I've seen all of the poker you've been playing with the boys lately. I think that's when Jay just started playing at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I was waiting to see what you were going to come up with. So you came up with, okay, I'm down to do a 3 to 5 minute video on a country relevant topic of the winner's choosing. So if England wins, you pick the topic, I research it and post it here. If the USA wins, I pick the topic, you research it and post the video. Interested? So I responded, game on. Even though you are number 1 seeds, I think England was second, possibly, or third.
I believe so, yeah.
I don't even remember in my lifetime England soccer making a final in my lifetime. As a fellow Red Sox fan, you will understand the keeping the faith idea, though.
Oh, yeah.
My only stipulation is it must be PG and it must be non-controversial. And of course, America won, obviously, but I had to back the British team. So the challenge that you gave me was, I'd love a brief synopsis on Gatorland, a tourist attraction in Florida. I'd love for you to be able to touch on the experience of Gatorland, any issues they had, and a hypothetical rating on whether you would actually go to Gatorland. Now, I actually think I'd been there twice, because I got some pictures of me holding a gator in that area. So I think I'd been there. And then the story kind of disappears for a little bit. Yeah. And I can actually find the next section. I think what happened was I was going on holiday, and then I was starting back at school. And then I totally forgot about it. And I was like, oh man, I totally forgot to do that. And I think you bailed me out. You said something like, hey, if I can appear on the podcast, you don't have to do that. I was like, sure, that's easy. We'll go with that. So this is still over a year ago. The trail picks up again in October 2019. Hey, you intending watching the AEW show tomorrow? We're going to be there. It would be great to get you on the show for your top moments from the TV watcher's perspective. So that was the very first episode of AE Dynamite. We even talked about doing a quiz with Jackson. Are you smarter than a 5-year-old? And you were totally up for that. And then things didn't quite work. You had a softball tournament. You had a race the next day. So that got put on hold again. And then it picked up again in July 2020, when we suddenly, I can't remember what happened. For some reason, I think I found that thread again somewhere. Probably because it was a year afterwards. It was probably on this day feature.
Like a memory feature. Yeah.
That must have been what it was. So we talked about it, and you were like, oh, absolutely. We'll figure something out. You originally talked about, have you done anything on 80s or 90s pay-per-views? And we were like, heck no, we haven't got anywhere back that far. And then from that, somehow we ended up doing the 2015 Royal Rumble. I have no idea how we got from one of those things. So what made you pick the 2015 Royal Rumble?
Yeah, so if I can, I got to give a shout out to my friend John. He's a big friend of mine who's a big fan of wrestling. And we always talk kind of about the glory days, the 80s and 90s of wrestling. And I think that's where kind of, his teeth were cut on being a wrestling fan. But the topic of kind of just like high-flying acrobatics and athletics came in, and he's like, dude, you have to check out Royal Rumble in January 2015. He was like, a lot of top rope antics, just real big action, a lot of endurance, really kind of showing off the athletics that come with wrestling. And I was like, dude, sign me up, because I think, especially right now with, all the different things going on in sports kind of being away, slowly coming back, you're just hungry for that kind of like athletic display. And so that stuck out, and I'm really stoked to be talking about it.
It was good for us as well, because that was one that Jackson could watch as well. Like, if it had been perhaps one of those late 90s ones, I'd have been like, I don't know if that one's going to be appropriate for you. All right, now, there was a pre-show for this match, which we didn't find when we were watching it on the network. So just for completion, the pre-show was Cesaro and Tyson Kidd with Adam Rose and Natalya, and they defeated the New Day, which was Big E, Kofi Kingston, and Xavier Woods. So we didn't see any of that. I think they might have shown highlights of that possibly within the actual pay-per-view. I think we actually saw the conclusion of that. All right, match one then is the Ascension versus the New Age Outlaws, who I was shocked were still wrestling in 2015, to be honest. I thought they'd retired way before that time. I saw JBL, Michael Cole, and Jerry the King Lawler were on commentary. As our guest, Ryan, what have you got for match one then?
Well, so I've got to say, a lot of my thoughts are very stream of conscious from when I was watching this. And I thought, just to kind of kick this off, the my opportunity, my legacy opening line for this event really resonated, because I was looking at this as, hey, this is my first podcast appearance. What's going to be my opportunity and my legacy? And am I really going to, make the most of this? So really hope we can kind of live up to the expectations. But right off the bat, I've got to say, New Age Outlaws coming out. And again, I was kind of surprised they looked a little old, but I like the fact that they recognize, hey, we're in Philly, and they're working with the Philly Fanatic, little cross-sport play there. I also say they looked a little old, as like I am 31 going on 32. So like I'm no spring chicken either. But the Ascension guys, I got to say, wasn't really digging their look. Don't know too much about them. I feel like they could have come out of a Brendan Fraser Mummy movie, but I don't know. It is what it is. Mason, I'm kind of curious. Who are you pulling for going into here? Because I think I was, even though I didn't like the look of the Ascension, I think I was pulling for the Ascension.
I think they would let the New Age Outlaws win, because they go way back, and I think they would just let them win that, because I don't think the Ascension was that big at this point.
I don't think they were ever particularly big. And I thought the reason you might have given is we've seen Billy Gunn at some independent wrestling events before he signed for AEW. So the chance that we got to see that, it was like, oh, great. He still looks, I'm going to say, you said he looked old then. This is 5 years on. He's still wrestling on AEW. He is still a beast as far as I'm concerned.
I believe.
I love him tagging with his son right now on AEW. I think he looks really good.
I believe we did see the Ascension at the Philadelphia event. We did? What it was. The Punjabi prison.
Yeah, I always forget what that one is. It was 2017. Yeah, we went to the pay-per-view in 2017 up there. It's very possible. I was never that big on the Ascension. They have a lot of similar tag teams in WWE who just too much of the same, and they never really managed to get some identity on this one.
You kind of mentioned the age, and I mean, I'll say this. Let me be very clear. Those guys could rock my world any day of the week. I would not stand a chance against them. But like, what's the athletic prime for like a wrestler here? Like, what age are we dealing? Like, is it a large window, or is it something similar to LeBron,
Yeah,
where they're just kind of keep going?
What do you think?
I'm going 28 to 38.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's a large window right there. Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's a little bit later than what soccer is. I think it takes them a while to sort of get to the heights, if you consider WWE the heights.
Yeah.
But if you look at the top people on that WWE roster, most of them are either going to be late 30s or actually early 40s. And some of the physiques of the people who are at the top, like I say, you wouldn't know necessarily that's their age. I was surprised recently to find out Bobby Lashley is 45, I think it is.
Wow.
Brock Lesnar's about 43. There's a few people. AJ Styles is in his 40s now as well. There's a few. Obviously, Rey Mysterio, I think, is 45, 46 possibly as well.
Yeah.
So, I think if you look after your body, which is not easy when you're throwing it onto concrete, then you certainly have the potential to last a lot longer. I want to say that Billy Gunn is actually late 50s. Wow. So, yeah, it can definitely vary. Well, Undertaker's obviously in his 50s as well. Obviously, there's a slowdown.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree with you. I would say the prime is probably mid-30s. I think is probably when they hit their peak.
Mm-hmm.
They're still young enough. They got the athletic ability, but they're old enough that they got the experience to sort of make it count.
Yeah.
There are a couple of exceptions, but like when you're like 28, then you have that new fresh ability, and that's when you hit your prime. And when you're later, late 30s, then you have that experience, but you don't have as much freshness as you used to have. But there are some exceptions, like MJF. Like, he's really young.
Yeah.
He's early 20s, and like PCO, he's still throwing himself all over the place, and he's late 50s.
Yeah, I don't think he is anymore, but when we last saw him, he was the Ring of Honor World Champion. So, yeah, there's definitely exceptions. The one that surprised me, who's managed to last a long time as well, I actually watched the debut of Jeff Hardy this week. Somebody posted it online. He was 16 when he had his first match in WWE.
16?
I was like, what? I have no idea. So, yeah, you could tell even at that age that he obviously knew what he was doing, but obviously he's grown on to be wrestling now for nearly 30 years. So, yeah, I think it can vary, but I would say mid-30s personally.
Interesting. And this is kind of a theme, kind of stepping away from that I've realized throughout this. Question for the refs here. Do wrestling fans appreciate and respect the refs as much? Because I saw a lot of suspicious, like, no calls, and it seemed a little fishy here. And I would say, as a fan of other sports, it seems like a common trend where referees really kind of drop the ball here.
Mason?
Definitely more in the independent scenes, because the refs are allowed to interact with the fans. Like, when you see WWE, like, they don't interact with the fans. They don't, like, do different stuff. But, like, when you see Bryce Remsburg in independent scene, and when you see, as we know, Buff Ref, which is over, you would know.
Oh, local one.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they're really fan favorites. They're, like, that you can see sometimes during the match that the refs get the cheers, not the wrestlers.
Mm-hmm.
So there are more in the indies.
Yeah, the indies, they definitely have their own character. I would say they're worse than your average ref, because that's part of the joy of, he got cheated out of this. We'll have to have a rematch thing. So no, I don't think you get necessarily booed as much. I think it's just, I think they set it up like, something was going on and there was a distraction ringside, and that's what caused them. So it wasn't necessarily their fault, as it were. I don't think you get any deliberately biased refs. That's kind of a rare thing to have. But
unless it's like a wrestler being a ref.
that would probably be the one exception.
Interesting. Well, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, I pulled away from this saying I kind of regret my decision for pulling for the Ascension, because I feel like they kind of really benefited from the lack of enforcement from the refs. But, it is what it is. I felt like it ended up being like a nice kickoff outside of the pre-show to get this event going.
All right, Mason, what you got?
So the New Age Outlaws have the Phillies hat with like the little strings on the bottom that Jackson has.
Jackson has that
one.
Yeah.
And you still got it, chance for Billy Gunn. And the Ascension won with Victor doing a leg sweep and Connor doing a crossbody at the same exact time. And at the end of the match, Connor has a little bit of blood on his lips.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a big win for Ascension. If you hadn't have known and this was the first time you were watching it, you would assume that that type of win would be something that would give them a big push. And it never really happened. And I don't think they're in WWE anymore. And if they are, I certainly haven't heard of them in at least a couple of years. Now, Jay actually comes out he starts naming Royal Rumble winners at this point. This is when I found out he's been watching way more YouTube wrestling than I realized. He starts naming now like every single Royal Rumble winner from like, I don't even know when the first one was. Do you know the first one?
No,
He did.
I can name a couple.
It was like 88 or something. But yeah, he starts naming all the winners from 88 up to 2000. Except he doesn't know the current one because we realized this later. We literally just watched WrestleMania 31. I get him to pick. I was like, which one WrestleMania do you want to watch? He's like, 31.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, that's fine. We'll watch that. We didn't realize that. And this was before we agreed on doing this one. It was only when we started watching this, we're like, oh, shoot, we already know who wins the Royal Rumble. Because we already saw the main event of that WrestleMania, so we knew the result for this one. He had no idea, though. That was about it. We knew. You'd even dropped the ball and said out loud who it was, and he still didn't know who it was later. And when there's like 3 people left in the ring, he still picked the wrong person who was going to win. But yeah, it kind of detracted from it a little bit, but luckily there was other matches in there as well. Obviously, Royal Rumbles have plenty going on in there as well. Paul Heyman, Triple H, Stephanie, they come out to discuss the problem, who is Brock Lesnar. Well, he's still a bit of a problem. I still don't know what's happening with him right now. Yeah. Paul Heyman's moved to Roman Reigns. I'm going to be interested to see what that means for Brock Lesnar. All right, match 2, the Usos against Damien Mizdow and The Miz. This was sponsored by Hulu. I didn't even realize Hulu was around in 2015, to be honest. So, of course, I had to look it up. 2010. Now, I didn't realize they were owned by Disney. That's why it's locked in on that package that we have. We get Disney, ESPN, and Hulu. So I didn't even realize that part of it as well. As of the first quarter of 2020, Hulu has 30 million subscribers. Oh, my gosh.
I'm one of them.
Me too. Like, I realize a lot of people are cutting cable and stuff, but I did not think they had as many as 30 million. But I was surprised. I don't know how many they had in 2015, but I do not remember Hulu being on my radar in 2015 at all.
They were pretty sweet back in the day because you could do a free package with limited commercials, and then you could do a paid subscription originally with no commercials. They've since changed it. But back in their heyday, I feel like they were really awesome. And I mean, now you can pair it, you figure, with Showtime, HBO, like whatever, all these different premium cable channels, plus like the live TV options. I don't know. I tend to spend more time on there than Netflix, to be honest, these days. So.
Wow, that's what the young kids are doing. All right, I'm exactly the reverse. All right, Mason, what you got for match 2 then?
I spend the most time on Disney.
Oh, there you go. Nothing wrong with Disney Plus right there.
Yeah, I'm trying to watch all the Simpsons.
Oh, nice.
Got plenty of.
That's like 30 seasons.
I'm 10 seasons in.
Really? Wow. I don't know you'd watch that many. Wow.
Well, this might ruin my credibility with your audience here, but I have seen 0 episodes of The Simpsons in my life.
Wow. I've only seen about 5 episodes. I've gone the longest time with not seeing any. I think they're okay. I just I'm not watching 30 seasons worth of it.
Yeah, no thanks.
Okay, so Miz gets punched in the stomach while jumping off the top rope, and Damien does the same thing on the outside. Mm-hmm. And Miz reaches out for the tag, but fakes out Damien. Jimmy jumps, but Damien takes the dive when on the outside. And Jay dives, and only his legs caught the Miz, so I thought that would hurt a lot. Mm-hmm. And Damien gets the skull-crushing finale, and Jimmy wins with a splash to the Miz.
Uh-huh.
Interesting.
What was your take then, Ryan?
So I wanted to come in and say Damien Mizdow seems super popular. I was a real big fan of him walking in over the Miz. I definitely would be like, give me Damien all day. But I would say it seemed interesting. My research showed that is it Usos? Yes. And the Miz had some history. They showed like the throwback clip of them working with the Miz to like hold a tag team title, it sounded like, also earlier. So I'm not sure what the beef was entirely, but it felt like it was primed for an upset. And I was like, okay, hey, let's see what happens here. But I got to say, definitely was not pulling for Miz. He felt a little cocky, a little too flashy for my likes. I don't know. Maybe he's not putting in the work for it. But I also felt like Damien Mizdow, I don't know if this reference is going to resonate, but he kind of felt like Rodney Dangerfield. He don't get no respect. And so I was hoping for a little bit for him. And, I don't know. I liked the fact that there was some top rope action in this fight. But as a whole, I feel like I walked away saying, like, let's go with the Usos. I hope they end up winning and pulling out the victory.
I think Usos are one of our favorite tag teams when we first started watching again. We particularly enjoyed this one, and Jackson particularly enjoyed this one as well. When we first started watching wrestling, or when I first started getting you to watch wrestling, was probably a year after this, or it might have been a year and a half after this. And Damien Mizdow was one of the first people we saw. And actually, it was one of the first WWE shirts that I actually got you. Because we just thought that character, as an 8-year-old watching, is hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
To a 6-year-old, it was hilarious. To a 40-something-year-old, it was still hilarious. The comedy side. I love that comedy aspect of wrestling. The thing that surprised me was he was loving it so much. I was like, you probably don't have that shirt anymore, do you? And you were like, I still have it. And I was like, well, it probably doesn't fit you anymore. Jay could have it. And you're like, no, it still fits me.
I made it.
There you go.
There's no way that shirt still fits you. I think you're just lying because you don't want to give up a shirt.
Well, I just sleep in it because there's only one shirt that I've ever gotten rid of because I didn't even know about it because Mom was so tired of having so many wrestling shirts. It was my first ever wrestling shirt. It was my Bray Wyatt one.
Oh, that was good.
Oh, cool.
Oh, that was a good one.
I know.
But yeah, no, missed out. Thoroughly entertaining. I always enjoyed seeing those matches. And then he just kind of disappeared after the scene. We only watched him for probably 2-3 months, and then he was gone. He's resurfaced on NWA recently, and but yeah, it was certainly a character that was, as you said, very popular with the crowd.
Oh, super
I was
popular.
really surprised they didn't go more with it. Vince loves his kind of stupid, gimmicky stuff, and that kind of really surprised me that they didn't stay longer with this one at all.
Yeah, I was just. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mason.
There was 10 other wrestling shirts I was supposed to get rid of, but I hid them.
Don't let your mom listen to this. Yeah.
And now, like, I think I got them out because she forgot about it.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
All right. In between segments, we've got Renee, Booker T, Byron Saxton, and Corey Graves are in the studio. And then they started doing their next promotion, which was for WWE Immortals video game, fighting game based on the professional wrestling company. This is all from Wikipedia. Released in 2015, not surprisingly. That's why they're doing the big push. The game was developed by NetherRealm Studios in conjunction with Phosphor Game Studios and published by Warner Brothers. The game was free on both app stores. Ooh, I bet you wish you had a smartphone then, Mason. On February 28th, 2019. The game was shut down and is no longer sold in app purchases. Sorry about that. Now, this was obviously, I was trying to fill in all the gaps in between, but for me, this one stood out because last time I think I talked to you, you were actually working for a gaming company, but I think you've since left that. So what's your relationship with gaming then, Ryan?
Yeah, so when I originally, for listeners, I live on the West Coast. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I originally moved out here to work for a mobile game company called Gameloft, and they produce kind of similar titles to what Warner Brothers was doing with WWE Immortals. I was a community manager there for 2.5, almost 3 years, doing social media management, influencer management, streaming, content creation, all that stuff. If you really want to be bored, YouTube Gameloft Ryan Eats a Pepper. You can see like me eat a habanero pepper and talk about a video game.
We will add that link into our episode notes so people can go and check that one out.
Yeah, please feel free. It's family friendly. We made sure to edit out bleep out all the things that were less than savory. But I'd say thinking about this, like this stands out as like. I remember it coming out actually. If I recall correctly, my company was actually trying to get the licensing for it at the time, but Warner Brothers ended up getting it, and since then, actually a couple people that I know still work for Warner Brothers, and they get some really cool licensing agreements over there, just because it's Warner Brothers. It's kind of a big name to throw around within entertainment. But it definitely makes sense. It would be free, and then you go with the in-app purchases for cosmetics or unlocking different wrestlers and stuff. And it's nice to take wrestling or any form of kind of like fun, engaging game on the go. So I can't hate on it. I think it's a shame they shut it down though.
Wasn't a game I was familiar with. Touch Arcade gave it 4 out of 5, and they carried on with other things. Seth cut a promo backstage, and then they had a promo obviously for WrestleMania 31, because that's what this whole event is really building up to. And then match 3, the Bella Twins versus Paige and Natalya. And while I was researching the Immortals game, and this was actually starting to play this next match, they actually had clips of the Bellas playing the game on YouTube. 1.8 million views for this thing. I was like, what in the world? Just watching them play that game. And Big Show Kane and Paige were playing, and their clip got 1.6 million as well. Wow. I was like, whoa, absolutely crazy. So obviously a very popular game at that time. All right, what you got for the match 3 then, Ryan?
So first of all, I want to say with the promos, I feel as if when a wrestling cuts or WWE cuts a good promo, it rivals other sports like playoffs or championships type promos. Excuse me, I can't speak there. But I want to say like I felt myself inching closer to the screen. I felt myself being pulled in, and like the storylines come up, the production values up, and the fact that they're able to cut these types of promos so regularly and so frequently, I think is a testament to, hey, this is the investment that you get, and these are the storylines they're trying to play out. And I've got to say, like, my hat is off to the like any wrestling production crew, because I was blown away. I think it's fascinating. You know, even though this event is 5 years old, like I was still finding myself get really freaking hyped.
I'm interested on that because most of the people who I talk to are people who I would say are very ardent wrestling fans, and they look at a lot of the minutiae, and they actually don't like a lot of the promos because they would know, and I don't know if you realize this, they're also scripted. Vince is very heavy on scripting promos, so the words are not coming from the wrestlers, which they probably would have done if we'd have watched one from the 80s, perhaps.
Yeah.
And then he started cutting back on that and then writing them and then force. And a lot of the big wrestling fans will say, hey, yeah, I didn't buy it. It wasn't. Let them speak. Let them say what they want to. It comes out more natural. So that's interesting. And so from your point of view, it came over as really good then. So
yeah, I thought from dropping in, I was like, okay, I would be interested to follow up and understand what's going to happen in WrestleMania and see kind of the play out. So maybe that is something where, you know, I don't want to say you get jaded, but the more well-versed you become in kind of the inner workings of wrestling, you're like, I wish it was a little bit different. So I'm not going to fault anyone for that. But yeah, I just thought it was super interesting seeing that. But yeah. Going into this match, though, I kind of want to get a read from you and Mason. What's the vibe on the Divas? I thought, for one, two things that stood out to me. One, I feel like they're much more athletic than probably some of like the previous generation Diva matches that I've seen. And I felt like there was, you know, technical aspects to it, and, you know, it wasn't just kind of for kind of aesthetics. On the flip side, my understanding is Paige is like the second or third athlete from this event already that's come from NXT. And I kind of want to touch on NXT seems like a great place for talent development. And like that farm system to develop superstars and things, I don't know. I would say it seems unrivaled because they're reliably able to churn out here's a star, here's a star, here's a star, which I thought was interesting.
Mason?
Okay, so I haven't watched too many of those Diva matches from a long time ago, but I know Chyna and Alundra Blaze, they're pretty strong. Mm-hmm. And there's some women now that like they're very flexible. So I don't think that Chyna and Alundra Blaze are that flexible, like they do all those flips and stuff, but I think they've gotten more flexible over the years and started like learning all those different moves.
The matches used to be a lot shorter. That would be guaranteed. You'd often have 3-4 minute spots, limited wrestling. A lot of grabbing by the hair and throwing them to the ground. So, yeah, it was certainly a lot less technical. This is probably when you're starting to look at that moving away from divas into, and you don't hear that word anymore on WWE at all, into just women's wrestling. Brie Bella and Nikki Bella probably don't have the highest level of respect in terms of their wrestling ability. Natalya certainly, because she comes from the Hart Foundation, so she's got a good wrestling background. And Paige, actually, her whole family's from England, from Norwich, England, and her family wrestled as well. So she's got a solid pedigree as well. Paige, we never really got to see. She got injured just before we started watching, so it was one when she came out, I was like, yes, we finally get to see Paige match, because they've been few and far between for us, which has been a real shame for us. NXT, I'm surprised it took WWF so long, or WWE as I guess it was when it finally came through, so long for them to finally actually make that change. Because you look at all the other sports, like as a baseball fan, you know that, and you use that word, the farm system. Like that came up in like the 1930s, I seem to remember, from like probably like the Cardinals, and one of the first to do it. And you see that for all the other sports. Or you have second teams, or you have that training for academies and things like that. And they didn't do that. They didn't have anywhere they could. Now they've got however many rings they've got set up there. They've got the top. And of course, if you invest in the product, when that product finally comes up to you, they're going to be of a much higher quality as well. So, yeah, they constantly turn over people. And this was, like I said, we didn't watch it at this point. But, yeah, this is around the time when they're starting to bring up people like Charlotte Flair, Sasha. Bailey actually moved up when we started watching it. Becky Lynch, Kevin Owens. There's like one after another, after another, after another. And a lot of those people now are the top stars. So I think for the top people, it works brilliantly. and WWE gets out what they need to. There's also, unfortunately, they have so many people in there
Yeah.
that there is some really good people who get overlooked. And for us, one of the local ones would be Deonna Purrazzo. She used to wrestle in our local region, and we got really excited when she got called up to WWE. She did have an injury. She got released probably about 2 months ago. She moved across to Impact Wrestling, and she's already champion there. So she has the caliber, but she just never quite got that chance. And I think for Vince, though, it makes sense. You put in as many people as you can buy. If you can afford them, put them in. Whatever comes out of it, they're making a good profit. So for them, you don't really care. If it doesn't work out quite as what they want, that's fine. They're still getting those people turned over. But yeah, I think it's got to such a degree now that it's not even necessarily the training ground. It's almost a third brand. Charlotte Flair moved back down for a couple of months. Finn Balor's been on that roster for a year now, I think it is. So there's talk of other big names possibly moving down and establishing it as a third organization rather than just, as you said originally, it was like a training facility and that was it, where they kind of learned the ropes. Now it's got to a much higher stage than that. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting product for sure.
Yeah, I'd say it seems cool because my understanding is they have like a pretty awesome setup in Florida. Is it like tied to Full Sail University or something like that? Yes. And so I've seen some of that, and it's just like, why not build it out as its own brand and just you start kind of double dipping and, like you said, put the talent in, kind of see what sticks to the wall and go from there. My one kind of regret for this match is I feel like we didn't see a lot of Paige, and coming into this I had realized that Paige had a lot of hype, and so kind of similar to you all, I was like, sweet. Somebody I recognize, somebody I know that got the hang time with WWE, and I'm excited to see the skills kind of on display. But I feel like, again, because of some referee negligence, I feel like she was never really able to get in, and the Bella Twins kind of used and abused the fact that they were able to get away with a lot of stuff. I don't know. Maybe I feel like they were kind of coasting on name and reputation. Mason, maybe that's the wrong read on the situation.
So Paige, I want to see more of her matches, but I think the most matches of her I've seen is Fighting with My Family, which is actually not her.
Okay.
Twice. It's on Hulu now.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Hey, you better get Hulu to cut you all a check for this promo. It's unreal.
I might have to watch that again. I thought that was a really good film, and I saw the same thing. When I watched it, like, I knew she was a young champion, but I've never actually seen the match when I watched the film, which I'm sure is not true for most people who watch that film.
Yeah.
Natalya does a delayed suplex for 10 seconds to Brie Bella, and each Bella got a leg, then did a somersault, and Natalya was about to tag in Paige, but Brie pulled Paige off the apron, and Nikki wins with a forearm.
I think this was a time when they were also playing as, because I said as well, they were listed as like identical twins, and you were like, they're not identical at all. They used to switch out on singles matches because they looked like. And I'm not the most observant with people's facial characteristics and things like that, but I'm like, nah, there's no way. I wouldn't buy that one at all. Now, I know we talked about Natalya because I mentioned her cat at one point. Her cat, I looked it up, has 159,000 followers on Instagram and follows 358 people. The number 2, Pawz. They did mention as well in the intro the TV show The Divas. They mentioned on April 20th, 2016 that they were gonna come and have their show, and that's finally when it did come out. And at this point, they've had 5 seasons and 45 episodes. Wow, that's kind of surprising. I would not have guessed that would have lasted anywhere near as long as that did. I know Total Divas has probably gone on even longer than that. One thing I liked from this match was, I think it was more at the end of the match. There's, of course, they love the signs at WWE. The guy behind me can't see. And he held up for ages. And it was kind of between matches, but yeah, if I'd have been there, I would have been so annoyed. I don't think I could have watched it in the 90s because there was thousands of those signs. And they're constantly trying to get on TV because it was such a novelty at that time appearing on TV. Now you can have your own YouTube channel, you can have your posts on social media. You couldn't do that in those times, but yeah, I thought that was a pretty funny sign. Roman Reigns promo, because he eliminated more people than anybody else in the previous Rumble. We had Gold and Stardust promo as well, because they're now on AEW. Rusev and Lana promo with a flag. We saw a flag match in Philadelphia as well. It was a terrible match. Rusev and John Cena. It was absolutely awful. I think it was one of the worst matches I've ever seen. We had a Miz and Mizdow promo. Big Show promo, Fandango promo. There was, to me, way too many promos for this. Like, you should be breaking these up between segments. Daniel Bryan promo as well. I got to keep scrolling here. Oh my gosh. But yeah, I guess they're trying to hype up the main event. So, all right, match 4: Brock Lesnar with Paul Heyman against Seth Rollins and Joey Mercury and they were ringside, and John Cena. All right, Mason.
So Seth Rollins is the Money in the Bank holder right now, and the Money in the Bank briefcases has a dent in it. Brock does a double suplex to Seth's security, which is J&J Security. John stands up when Brock has the same type of arm lock, on him, and Seth breaks it up by jumping on them. Double suplex and an AA to Brock, but a kick out at 1. John does 2 clotheslines, nothing. And then a third one knocks Brock down. Seth got caught in an F5, 3-8, and caught in an F5, 3 AAs to Brock, and a curb stomp, but broken up at 2 by John Cena. John Cena rams Brock through the barricade, then into the steps, and after all that, Seth jumps off the top rope and onto Brock, which was on the announcer's table. Seth tries for the stomp, but John gets the STF, but Seth's security breaks it up, and then it was a double AA to Seth's security, then an AA to Seth Rollins, and Seth jumps off the top rope, and Brock breaks it up with a German to Seth and John. Seth hits Brock in the head with the Money in the Bank briefcase twice, and Brock wins with Seth's attempt at a stomp, then turns it into an F5. And Brock had a total of 11 German suplexes in this match.
Now, I don't know if they did this one because I don't remember because it's a few weeks ago, but there used to be people, when we started watching, who were doing the counts. Like, they'd go, 1, and sometimes they'd have people in the crowd holding signs up with the different numbers on. I don't think they did that for this one, though.
Yeah, I don't think they did.
I don't remember. I'm going to be honest. I don't remember much about this match. In fact, if you'd have given me the 3 names, I don't think I could have told you who the winner was. The only thing I remember really is, because we had Jay with us as well, like, he loves the AA. He likes doing that with one of his soft toys, like, AA. So I knew he would knew that one. So, but yeah, besides that, I didn't remember much at all about this one, except for, and you already said this, the great dive from Rollins to Lesnar on the announcer's desk. To me, that was like, I think part of it, though, was sometimes when the matches are good, sometimes you just get so engrossed in it that you don't. And I always play the character where I don't have to describe the action. I can just describe some of the incidental things as well. Yeah. So I could just sit back and actually enjoy this and then try and pick up something else if necessary. All right, what's your take, Ryan?
I mean, I got to say, I had a lot of notes for this. Coming into this, this was the match that I was like, the Royal Rumble is cool, but this was like the match where I was like, this is why I want to pick this event. I feel like it delivered on all fronts. Great characters. I was kind of curious to understand. For the longest time, Cena was like a fan favorite, really great. And I'm guessing based on the boos, he's kind of had some form of heel turn at this point. And, he's not maybe WWE's golden boy. So I thought that was kind of interesting to see. Mason, I eventually want to hear a little more technicalities around what does the Money in the Bank contract and the briefcase allow Seth to do? I definitely didn't fully understand that. So I want to get your thoughts on that. But similar to what we touched on earlier, some of the kind of like the peak age limits too for guys, or like prime ages for wrestlers. Brock Lesnar's been around for forever. Between WWE, MMA, like he's been doing that stuff since the early 2000s, and obviously has a very storied collegiate wrestling career. So I thought that was impressive. But like all things considered, going into this, I felt like Cena was potentially the most athletic person in the ring. But my opinion kind of changed as things went on, and I saw Seth doing a lot of the top rope stuff, which is really what I wanted to see. Especially, I mean, that jump from the top rope to go on to Brock Lesnar. I mean, at one point, he's got to be, easily 15, 20 feet in the air?
Yeah.
It was unreal. And the fact that it results in like a broken rib with Brock Lesnar, and then he's still able to come in, again, a testament to the durability and kind of the endurance and athleticism of these folks, which is crazy to me. But I felt like Cena was getting beat up real hard. Does Brock Lesnar only know how to do a suplex? I felt like he was just doing suplexes everywhere. I was like, come on, man, let's get some variety here. That felt a little bland, but maybe I'm demanding too much. Honestly here, power of John Cena. I wish I could squat a Brock Lesnar. I don't know how he did it. That was unreal, especially because I think you touched on this earlier where you're like, hey, the matches go on for a lot longer now. I mean, these matches were, I forget, maybe like 20, 30 minutes or something like that. And I'm like, but you had me run around doing all this stuff. There's no way I basically squat an individual the size of Brock Lesnar here. But yeah, a big fan of my notes for when Seth Rollins jumped was, oh my God, the high flying jump rope through the table. It delivered. Holy crap. This is the athleticism I wanted to see. So yeah, I felt like coming into this, I was maybe my like outdated information was biased, but I was like, I feel like Brock Lesnar's always a little bit of a foil. So probably not him. You know, maybe Seth Rollins is kind of the new guy, although I'm curious why his hair always looks wet. And then John Cena, I was like, this has got to be who you're hoping to become kind of like the heavyweight, win the heavyweight title, because that sets up some great potentially like redemption arcs or rematch arcs. But alas, we stand corrected. It was Brock Lesnar at the end of the day, really powering through injury, which was cool.
Cena's been around a long time as well. I think he was 2002, 2003. So, yeah, he's been around a long time as well. Yeah, Brock's been around so long. He hasn't really changed. Like, if you look at him in his early 20s and you look at him in his 40s, that's not much change. If you compare your average person there in that 20-year gap, there's some big differences there. He essentially looks almost the same. All right, Mason, do you want to explain how Money in the Bank works then?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so you can cash it in anywhere, anytime. So I believe
for a title opportunity.
Yes, for any title opportunity, and I believe one time it was cashed in by a sea.
By what?
By a sea.
What does that mean?
Like a water sea.
Oh. Okay. I thought you meant that the person was the sea.
Oh,
okay,
no.
You mean near the sea.
Yes. Near the sea.
Well, that makes a lot
okay.
more sense. When you said by a sea, I'm like the letter C.
I'm like frantically Googling who's the wrestler named the Sea.
Yes, there was. Somebody cashed it in on the coast, near the ocean, and yes, you're right.
Because I have a wrestling card of that, and it said by the Red Sea or something like that.
The Red Sea?
I don't
Wow.
know.
It must have been an international event if that was true. I've certainly seen one where there was at the coast and they went into the water and stuff like that. But yeah, yeah.
So I have one other thing. So I recently just went to vacation in Ohio to visit my grandparents, and so I went up on the ladder to help set up the zip line, and I looked down and was all like, "There's no way I'm jumping off of that."
They definitely put their bodies on the line, that's for sure. But yeah, you look at those three people. I would say you talked about Lesnar and Cena having a great longevity of career as well. But I would say Seth Rollins is certainly no slouch either. Since he's moved up from through NXT, then yeah, he's obviously been a main part of the Shield, and he's had his titles, and he's one of probably the biggest figures in the company right now as well. So yeah, three huge names for this one.
Yeah, it seemed like a great fight, and yeah, I don't know. I was really excited. I felt like this one of all the matches I've seen have definitely delivered, and made watching this event worthwhile 110%.
I didn't even remember Joey Mercury was in it, to be honest. We've actually seen Joey Mercury up in Maryland at one of the indie events. He was champion at MCW, I think, Maryland Championship Wrestling. I didn't even remember he was in it. I just suddenly looked at that. I was like, oh, I'd totally forgotten about that one. All right, I have no idea how we're going to do the main event, of course, which is the Royal Rumble. The only thing I can think of is if I break it up into groups of 5, and then if there's anything from any of those first 5 people entering, then we can talk about those. So the order was, number 1 was The Miz, 2 was R-Truth, 3 was Bubba Dudley, 4 was Luke Harper, and 5 was Bray Wyatt. So obviously there's some, the Wyatt family already got 2 people in there. Yeah. All right, I've lost which order we are. Ryan, I think it's you to begin. Anything from the first 5 people at all?
I want to call out, I think, props to WWE for getting Bubba Ray Dudley in, getting the Philly guy in with the crowd. I thought that was awesome, and he came in with high energy, which was great. I thought it was interesting that the Wyatt family had 2 people in the ring there for a while, and kind of the ability to cross or double cross folks was super interesting. I also love the name, the Dudley Death Drop. That's probably like as one of my top favorite name moves coming out of this event. I really liked R-Truth getting the crowd involved with the what's up. And one thing I want to highlight here, several wrestlers across the women and the men had body piercings. That seems like a workplace hazard. Am I the only one that's concerned? Like, hey, what happens if this belly button ring or this nose ring or this ear ring gets pulled out? Like, you might be slightly miserable. So I don't know. Maybe they just don't worry about it. Hazard pay, workers comp, whatever it might be. Was glad to see the Miz go, and that's kind of like my initial thoughts on the first 5. I'd say the only other thing that stands out before passing the mic here is 90 seconds felt long in this interval. I almost felt like I would have been like a fan of a 60-second interval for someone to come out to really pack the ring, but that's just me.
We've been to, and they do these on the indies, you can obviously do whatever you like. They can't call it a Royal Rumble because that's trademarked. But yeah, we've been to ones where it's like 60 seconds as well. And yeah, you start to get it packed a little bit more, and it hypes it up a little bit. We've seen 75 seconds as well. I think the thing they do like is, though, the countdown. Like the audience, when you're actually there, the counting down, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And of course, everybody likes to be obnoxious and go and do exactly the same sound as the klaxon goes. But yeah, I think part of it is, and I can't remember if it was for this one, sometimes the length of the actual entrance is so long that if you made it shorter, the other person wouldn't have necessarily. They often take their time getting into the ring. That would be one thing I would change. Like, you've got to be in the ring within 10 seconds of your number going off, or else you're out straight away. That would actually speed things up a little bit. But I understand also you kind of want to showboat a little bit. You might want to walk down the aisle and give high fives to people either side, which obviously is great for the fans. If you're on that main part where they come down, that's got to be so cool watching every single wrestler walk up and then as they get knocked out, walk back out again as well. Anything from you from 1 through 5, Mason?
Yeah. So you were talking about piercings. One story that I saw, that Hanley Ramirez, one time he was sliding into second base and lost a $10,000 earring.
No thanks.
I think he had $100 million contract. For him, it's more change,
he's probably okay. That's like you or I losing $1,
So before that match, there was a bunch of faction. I feel like Matt right now, and 216,000 total pounds in a Royal Rumble before 2015.
Oh, I forgot about all these,
470,000 fans total in attendance in a Royal Rumble, and Triple H once lasted 3 hours and 51 minutes in a Royal Rumble.
Total?
Yes, total.
Not in one. They don't go on that long. That would be impressive.
R-Truth helps Bubba Ray to jump off the top rope into Mrs. Dingo, and a 3D to Bray Wyatt. A 3 and a 3D. Bray and Luke decide not to fight each other, and Curtis. Never mind.
Well, that's the fine. So the next one's Curtis Axel, the Boogeyman, Sin Cara, Zack Ryder, and Daniel Bryan. So go on, keep going.
So Curtis Axel gets taken out, and Eric replaces him, and Luke and Bray team up against Eric. And Boogeyman goes one-on-one with Bray Wyatt, and for like the creepiest person wins, and Bray won that creepy match. And who was the last person?
Daniel Bryan.
Okay. Daniel Bryan, it was pretty boring until Daniel Bryan, because the past 4 or 5 people got absolutely squashed by Bray. So they came in, he got sent out. So it was pretty boring at that point.
Well, that can certainly happen on this. And I think Curtis Axel claims that technically he won that Royal Rumble because he never got thrown over the top rope. So technically that Royal Rumble's still going on. It's one of the rules that I don't like, actually, when things like that. Like I said, I wish they would make up rules where you've got to get back into the ring. And I can't remember specifically, but you probably got the notes for this at some point, Mason. There's normally someone who gets thrown over the outside, they land on something, or they get caught by somebody, they get moved way out of the way so they can't even fight, or they'll hide under the ring, because you could just roll out under the bottom rope and hide, and then they'll go, well, I never got thrown over the top rope, and then they'll come back. I don't like that rule at all. I don't think you should be allowed. If you leave from your own choice, I think that should be instant elimination. If you get kicked out through that, then you have to rejoin within. That would be my only change to the Royal Rumble, because they always lead in with that story. And I've already remembered how this finishes now. So, yes, that's definitely going to come up a little bit later as well.
Roman Reigns once got attacked in a Royal Rumble, and he got attacked on the outside by Alberto Del Rio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of no rules elements to some of these ones. The next 5 people, although you can certainly jump in with anything from those other people as well, Ryan. Fandango, Tyson Kidd, Stardust, DDP. I was really excited to see Diamond Dallas Page. That was the era when I first moved to the States and I was watching some WCW and Rusev as well.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'd say the one thing Mason called out kind of the stats they were speaking to, like all the poundage and stuff like that. As a now data analyst and like, just a fantasy sports junkie in general, the introduction to stats into the broadcast or something you could kind of sink your teeth into, I thought was really cool. And now I'm like, hey, when is, daily wrestling or like daily fantasy wrestling is going to come in to play or something like that? Because it'd be really cool to be able to do that stuff, all things considered. But yeah, I thought that was like just a really neat interaction, and I'm glad you touched on the implications of the Curtis Axel stuff, because I was like, well, hold on, what happens here? He never made it to the ring, and so like, and then the one person from his intro that did make it wasn't like a legitimate entry, so it was very confusing, and I do feel like that's an interesting loophole that it would be nice to see them kind of button up potentially.
I don't understand why they even do it. Why not just put Eric Rowan in at number 6? Why does Curtis Axel even have to walk out? It makes no sense to the story as far as I can tell either.
Yeah.
Unless Curtis Axel was a huge star and then he could say, hey, look, I got cheated out of this. Curtis Axel was not a big star at this point. So it wasn't that big of a deal that, he didn't make it into the Royal Rumble. I didn't lose any sleep with him not featuring in that Royal Rumble.
Exactly. The last thing I'll say, or kind of like real quickly before passing it off, or like the last two things rather, is the Boogeyman was super weird. Probably my least favorite wrestler that I've seen in this event. I could neither have him or not have him. It is what it is. But the foaming at the mouth, I was just like, dude, you need to go see a doctor. But I also felt like for all the hype he got as like being this really weird guy, the actual like bit of the match that he was involved in was like super lackluster. Just like completely gotten rid of. And I'm like, someone with this backstory and this character, I feel like has to put up a little bit more of a fight. So a little disappointed there. But also Daniel Bryan, great energy. Like you said, Mason, I feel like brought in great energy, power of positivity, power of yes. Sign me up all day. That's what we need in 2020 right now. So that was like really encouraging to watch.
That was the hard one for me when Jackson said I wanted to watch WrestleMania 31. I was like, don't you want to watch WrestleMania 30? I still haven't seen WrestleMania. There's a lot of WrestleManias that I haven't seen.
Yeah.
So anyone who wants to watch, I'm pretty much like, yeah, I haven't seen it. So my first pay-per-view I actually watched was WrestleMania 33.
Oh, cool.
I'd been to a couple of live events myself. So, yeah, I didn't used to pay for them. I was like, no way, I'm not paying $50 for a pay-per. I'm like, you crazy? $10 a month. And, hey, I don't mind paying that at all. I think the thing with the Boogeyman was, he's not obviously a current wrestler. I think it was more a shout-out to, do you remember the Boogeyman from 15 years ago? I think it was more that they'd like to bring in some former wrestlers. They're never going to do anything amazing, but it is kind of cool when you get that pop like, we haven't seen that guy in years. And then they get to come out. Anything you want to add, Mason, before I move on to the next few?
I like the Boogeyman's feud with Booker T.
I don't remember that.
Oh. But I'd say, like, to the people that they're bringing, that's why I smiled ear to ear when Diamond Dallas Page came out. I was like, awesome. This is somebody who kind of, again, was cutting vicious promos back in the day. And just, like, off the cuff, right off the top of your head. And so it was like just like a nice callback where I'm like, hey, this is somebody I recognize, somebody I know that's got, like, the street cred. And so maybe that's what I was hoping for with Boogeyman, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, next few people then were Goldust, Kofi Kingston, Adam Rose, Roman Reigns. So you're excited for that one, Mason?
Yeah.
Mason was we're recording this the day after, or 2 days after Payback. So Roman Reigns has his title shot, and you had every single piece of Roman Reigns memorabilia that you own, I think, on for him actually winning that match then. And number 20 was Big E, who actually featured in the pre-show. I think that might be where they showed the clip, actually. That was like, hey, in case you missed it earlier, this is what Big E did earlier. All right, anything from these five?
So Stardust tried to eliminate Goldust and the Rosebuds, and vice versa. And the Rosebuds catch Kofi Kingston, but they don't do that same thing for Adam Rose. And Jay watched WrestleMania 31, but still thinks Roman isn't going to win.
That's
and
funny.
You even said, I know who's going to be in it. I was going to win. Roman Reigns was going to win. And he still didn't pick up. He was probably, that's the joy of being a 6-year-old, that you can get so focused on one thing.
Oh, yeah.
You totally zone out everything else that's going on around you. And it's a wonderful quality at times and extremely annoying at other times.
Yeah.
And I'm passing it on to you, Ryan.
Awesome, man. I got to say, I thought Rusev was interesting, and he continued to look intimidating throughout this. Just a big guy. I also was kind of curious to get a read on Stardust and Goldust. I don't know. They didn't resonate with me. I thought they were a little too Cirque du Soleil for me. And, at the end of the day, I was disappointed that, like you said, wasn't it Goldust who tried to betray Stardust, Mason, or was it the other way around? I can't remember.
Stardust, but Goldust tried to do it the year earlier.
Gotcha. Okay, so that seemed a little confusing to me. And then again, I was like, how are they going to let DDP get beat up by Stardust? That doesn't match up with my expectations here. But what I will say is I liked Daniel Bryant with the 2-for-1 takedown. And I think if I recall correctly, the commentators were talking about how he's recently come back at this point from back surgery, which I thought was, impressive, very impressive. I don't know. I'd say Kofi Kingston stood out as being pretty cool by being caught by the Rosebud folks, I believe, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And they also highlighted the Royal Rumble before that he did like the handstand walk. So that guy seems to be just really athletic and benefiting from a lot of kind of like outside of the ring luck, which is cool. Hey, good for him.
That would definitely be one of his things. Yeah, there's been multiple years where that's happened, and often sometimes the New Day will help him as well.
Yeah.
They'll put him on the barricade so he can just kind of sit, and then they'll help him get back into. Yep, that's certainly one of the things. I think you're right, and that's probably also why Goldust and Stardust eventually got. Well, I think they got let go by WWE, or perhaps they left by their own choice. Then perhaps Vince wasn't happy with how they were working, gave them less time, and then they choose to leave by themselves. Obviously doing very well now. Cody basically is a huge part of AEW, and certainly Goldust seems to have his time over there as well. He's certainly featured in more matches in AEW than I've ever saw him on WWE when we were watching. So
wow, he went from like mid 400s in the PWI to top 5.
Who?
Cody.
Wow.
Cody? He would have definitely, I'm sure there's been a big rise in his rankings for that. All right, next few people. Damian Sandow was back again, so Jackson was really happy with that one. Jack Swagger, Ryback, Kane, and one of my favorites, Dean Ambrose, or John Moxley as he's now known. All right, I know you commented there was a lot of big people on this one, all right, Mason? Yeah. I've lost where we're up to, but go ahead, Mason, what you got?
Okay. The Miz tried to take Damian's spot, but when he got up to the apron, he got pushed off by Roman, and there was no fan reaction from Kane, and that really surprised me because it was silent. And Titus got eliminated after 4 sets.
I haven't even read out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're trying to tread on Ryan's toes right there. Right? Let me mention the last few entrants, and you guys will want to talk about those. But also, obviously, after that, there's even when all 30 people in the ring, there's still a lot going on afterwards because there's probably still 5 or 6 people. All right, the last few people then: Titus O'Neil, Bad News Barrett, Cesaro, Big Show, and number 30 was Dolph Ziggler.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I thought that the Titus, I basically wrote Titus hello, Titus goodbye, and I was blown away that the commentator said that's not the shortest Royal Rumble entrance and exit at 4 seconds. Apparently there's something shorter, which I was like, that I need to see that. 1 second?
Yep.
Who is it?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. Well, that was interesting. I gotta say again, similar here, Mason. A lot of big guys. Ryback is jacked, like a massive guy. I was impressed to see Kane, again, another kind of a nod to the durability and the longevity of a lot of these folks. And then, at this point, I'm thinking, okay, here, without knowing how the rest of the year panned out and without knowing how the Royal Rumble pans out, Roman Reigns versus like a Brock Lesnar is potentially like the fight that you're looking for, which is, I believe, this would feed into. And I feel like you're hoping he performs well and is able to come out on top because that just seems to be like, I don't know, that to me feels like it draws eyeballs. But I had apparently Cesaro punched Ambrose at some point really intensely, so I called that out. I was pretty impressed there. And Dolph Ziggler, I thought, was incredibly flexible. He had 2 high kicks to the dome, getting Bad News Barrett out of the Royal Rumble, which I thought was pretty cool.
So everybody attacks the Big Show, but all of them got pushed off, which makes all the wrestlers look really weak.
It does.
Yeah.
You guys got to have that done at least once.
Yeah. And Dolph does a double DDT to the Big Show and Kane. Roman's bleeding now, and Big Show and Kane team up against Dean and Roman, and they're the final four. And they eliminate Dean, and Big Show tries to eliminate Kane, so both attempt a choke slam to each other, and Roman throws them over with like a clothesline, and Rusev comes back, shows that he's not eliminated, and Roman just does an easy elimination.
Yeah, I did like the fact that was the one I suddenly remember. I was like, oh yeah, Rusev. I totally forgot. I knew they have it every time. Like, it's not a surprise anymore, unfortunately. It's done too frequently. I don't think it's within, and I know it's entertainment, but I don't think it's within the spirit of the event. I think it's unfair for somebody who battles a long time. Like at that greatest Royal Rumble, I think Daniel Bryan was in the ring for like 70 minutes. Jeez. I think that does a real disservice when somebody only does 2 minutes in the ring and then hides for however period of time it is. I actually did have one thing down for this one. Cesaro, I didn't recognize him. He didn't have any tape on his shoulder. I'm so used to seeing him have that tape because his shoulders, I don't know how you can be injured for that long but continue to keep fighting for as long as that. He needs to take time off and get surgery or something. But yeah, it was unusual to see him without any tape on.
Yeah, one of the wrestlers they mentioned, I forget who, maybe it's not Cesaro, but they were mentioning that they came back from rotator cuff surgery too, and I'm like, oh my gosh, getting into a Royal Rumble so quickly after coming off of shoulder surgery. Hey, good for you. That's impressive.
Yeah, there's some tough injuries. All right, shall we cut to the chase then?
Yep.
Because although Rusev was eliminated, that's not the end of this event. And this is the part I didn't know about. We knew the winner, but we didn't know the whole story. Oh my gosh, the pop for this would have been incredible if you'd have been there. Go on.
Okay, I didn't actually write this down, but I remember it. Okay. Big Show and Kane have come back in to attack Roman Reigns, and The Rock comes out and helps him and takes them out. And so they start hugging and all that stuff, and Triple H and Stephanie just walk out, and they start talking with The Rock, and then they just walk out.
Which order is this? I thought Rusev has Rusev been eliminated at this point?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. We're jumping around a little bit, but I think that's fine. I think we got everything in there in the end. For me, like Rock's my number one guy. Like him and Stone Cold Steve Austin, to come to America at the time when both of those two are at the top of their game.
Oh yeah.
My first pay-per-view I went to was SummerSlam 2000 because I was in North Carolina and it just happened to be in Raleigh. To get to see both of those guys, The Rock, whenever he comes back, to me, it's exciting. It's just one of those characters that people just love. He has all the catchphrases. As soon as you hear that music drop, still got the physique, still has that whole awe once he comes out. And that was a part I didn't expect. I did not if I knew that, I'd forgotten about it. And I was like, okay, this has been a good event. And then when he finally came, I was like, can you imagine being there? That would have been absolutely crazy. And having been to a pay-per-view event in Philadelphia as well, that was certainly possible. We actually got to see the Great Khali. That was one of the surprises in that one. We had I think it was only the second Punjabi prison match in history, which is why I said, hey, we've got to go. We got to go to Philly. It's only 2.5 hours. If they only have two of these, and Big Khali came in for that one as well. So that was kind of cool for that event. All right, anything else for this event at all?
I thought kind of when we were talking about the Kane and the Big Show teaming up, I just was thinking, this is not fair. These guys are so big, so strong. I literally was, again, thinking I've had so many predictions go wrong for this event so far. How is Roman Reigns going to overcome this? And again, when The Rock came out, I mean, again, as not even a super massive wrestling fan and kind of just getting absorbed into this event, I knew the minute he came out, I was like, okay, can't wait. Here comes like the people's elbow, something like this. It's just instantaneous, recognition. It just elevates the game, elevates the people he's wrestling with. It was absolutely fascinating, and I really thought, kind of through some of the doldrums of the event, this was a nice way to cap it off, where you're just like, heck yeah, this is going out with a bang. So really, really enjoyed it.
The thing I'm loving about this, obviously this is an audio podcast, the fact that when you're talking about a lot of these things, you've got a huge, broad smile on your face.
Oh, yeah, man.
So, I can tell that you were really getting into this. Now, I am curious, have you watched any WrestleManias then?
I have not watched full WrestleMania pay-per-views. At this point, I'm watching a lot of the historically, this is an iconic WrestleMania, a clip or event. So, and that's kind of where like some of the pull for, hey, let's do something in the 80s or 90s came from, because that's a lot of stuff I've seen, but no, not a full one yet.
Well, I was kind of curious because although WrestleMania is their sort of the big event of the year, a lot of people talk about their favorite pay-per-view is actually not WrestleMania, it's actually the Royal Rumble. And for you as well, Mason, when we chose to start going back and watching stuff from the catalog, we didn't go back and watch WrestleManias. I've been doing that with Jay. It was, can we watch a Royal Rumble? Like, absolutely. And then we started watching every single one, and we must have watched 10 or 11 in a row, and I think we stopped at one point. But yeah, we watched 10 or 11, 12 of these things, and each time it was like, they're exciting.
Oh yeah.
Those 30 people, you get the characters that you've not seen for years suddenly come back in. You get your established characters in there. You get your fun characters in there. It's a fun event. Whereas WrestleMania can go on a little bit, I got to say. One of the things I didn't write down, but I was kind of surprised by, when you said this, I was like, oh, this is probably going to be like a 4-hour pay-per-view or something. I think it was under 3 hours. Which
it was 2 hours, 47 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, that shows a real change. Obviously, COVID times, the times have dropped dramatically. But, I was at WrestleMania 35, and we didn't leave the stadium until, I think, 12:30. It was absolutely crazy. I think it was a 2-hour pre-show, which we went to because we didn't want to miss anything. 5.5-hour show. 7.5 hours. That's a lot of wrestling.
A long time, yeah.
So, I think 2 hours, under 3 hours is a must, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I think 2 hours 40, 2 hours 30, 2 hours 45, I think is around that sweet spot. As long as you have an event like this right at the end, because it constantly keeps you going.
Oh, yeah.
Just as you think it's finished, then The Rock comes out and you're like, oh, I can go with this
I'm back in.
10 minutes, and then you're back in again. So, yeah, I was curious if you'd seen other sort of the big pay-per-views. But, yeah, for me, when you suggested Royal Rumble, I was like, absolutely. I'm totally in for watching a Royal Rumble, particularly one I hadn't seen at all.
Yeah, it was a blast. I mean, I think, you can relate as a Red Sox fan. I've seen too many long Yankee Red Sox games, and I was like, hey, this runtime seems like it could be in that sweet spot where you're like, every time it gets a little bit of a lull, something's going to happen to pick it back up. And I think to your point, yeah, the Royal Rumble is the perfect way to end it because it's just constant injection of personality, constant injection of energy. And I felt like I was on a high the whole last, hour 15, which was tough for me to compare, but I'd say against other sporting events, oftentimes you don't have that where you're rejuvenated time and time again.
I kind of like the new ones as well. Within the last 2 years, I think it's 2. I don't think it's any more than that. They've started having the Women's Royal Rumble as well now.
Oh,
so
cool.
when they have the Royal Rumble, they'll normally have the Women's Royal Rumble right at the start of the event. Then they'll have some of those little matches in the middle. And then at the end, they'll have the Men's Royal Rumble. And I think they actually flipped it one year as well. I think they did it the other way around. I think the females actually had the main event. That can be kind of interesting as well to throw in 2 at the same time, and then they were bringing back all their famous stars. Trish Stratus came back, Lita came back, and it was like, oh! Some people who I don't remember, like I don't remember Alundra Blaze at all. But yeah, Mickey James, it was like, oh, this is, that's definitely kind of cool to see as well.
The one thing I do want to say is the kind of the smack talk and the trash talk, when they weren't holding the mics, I was kind of envious to hear what would it be like for a kind of a COVID event, because I feel like with that you can definitely hear what everybody's saying without the fan background, and I really enjoy that aspect of, say, like, the NBA, the bubble scene or the playoffs. You've been able to hear like players kind of talking on the court and everything, and so I would love to hear just kind of like, again, since you can't get those off the cuff promos, it'd be cool to just hear what people are saying and building out that character and building out the tension in the match with their voices, which would be really cool.
I thought it was cool to begin with, but actually it's kind of minute stuff. Like, is that all you got?
Oh, okay.
And then after a bit, it's like, well, what else can you kind of really say? And it's kind of difficult for the wrestlers because they normally want some noise because they want to call the spots. Like when we go to independent wrestling matches, we're super close. Our worst seats are like 3 rows back. Mm-hmm. So they need noise because otherwise you can't say, all right, throw me across the ring, then do a suplex or whatever the move's going to be. So WWE obviously can disguise it better because they can filter out that sound if they need to or whatever. But yeah, in general, the sound plays a really important part. One, to tell the wrestlers, hey, look, you're doing a great thing right now. We're really digging what you're doing. Keep doing this. But also give them the opportunity to say, all right, you're going to do this move next, and then I'm going to do this in response to it.
Nice. That's good to know. But yeah, no, again, I know we're kind of getting ready to wrap things up, but I just want to say thanks to you both for letting me come on and talk about this. It was a blast. It was fun.
Oh, thank you very much for doing this. And you totally undersold yourself because you're like, well, I don't want to embarrass myself. Like, I don't know enough. And I was like, you're going to be just fine. Like I say, we love just talking about what we saw and all the different things. I like different people's takes on it as well. And that was the other reason when you said like, hey, I was like, perfect. That's what I want to see as well. I want that different viewpoint. And that was the whole point of this podcast originally, that we had that generational podcast, that we had different ages who would see things slightly differently. And you kind of fit, well, not quite right in the middle there, but you're certainly a lot younger than me, and you're certainly a lot older than Mason as well. So I think that added in that extra element today. Normally we'd ask if there's anything to promote. Can you give us the name of that site again, so as we're adding it into our notes, we know what to look for?
Oh yeah, so if you just go on YouTube and you or search on YouTube Gameloft Ryan Eats a Pepper, you should see me eating a habanero pepper. Yeah, you can probably get a good chuckle out of that. But I will say, kind of in closing, maybe not a promotion, but maybe a future promise here. Mason, and when Jackson gets of age, we got to get you all out here to Oakland, whether I'm out here or not, and you all got to come to a Hood Slam. Look up Hood Slam. It is local wrestling. You have to be 21 or older to get in, but it is phenomenal. Serial Man is probably my favorite wrestler based out of here. Honest to God, it's a great time. It's hilarious. It's over the top. It used to be once a month, the first month of every Friday in Oakland, but now it's every week. They're also streaming on Twitch, but definitely they've got some really great characters, and just a little raunchy at times. But like I said, when you get a little older, definitely we got to make a trip out here for that. It'd be a blast.
And we already talked about, I'm going to say, I'm trying to see every stadium in the country. And if it hadn't been for COVID this year, I would have actually completed my whole list.
Oh, wow.
I had 2 that I was going to go see in Florida over spring break. And then over the summer, I was going to go to the new one in Dallas. And I was also going to pick up the Cardinal Stadium, which I hadn't seen. So that set me back a bit. But we already talked beforehand. Oakland, I know, is opening up in 23. So at some point, we will definitely be over on that West Coast. And I think one of Jackson's early requests is, I want to see Dodger Stadium. I'm like, dude, that's like several thousand miles away. That's not like a day trip. So
Yeah.
we'll be over there at some point. But yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Ryan. We really appreciate it.
It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye to me.
And it's goodbye from them.
Goodbye.
The music was Zigzag by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. HTTP. Just go on /creativecommons.org/licenses/by/3.0/
Visionaries Global.